There's 5 key drivers that I reckon that I've identified that drive businesses, and you've probably heard of balanced scorecarding and that sort of stuff, so you can use whatever term you like, but I'm a simple man. And the 5 things, I think if a business has a really good planning process, it has some structured sales and marketing activities, it's operationally fit, it understands the finance and admin part of its business, and it's got some good people processes in place. If it can tick the box in those 5 areas, then it's doing a pretty good job. In saying that, it's still got to know where it's going. And so that's how I see strategy and implementation link into the two.
This is the Ryan Marketing Show, and you're listening to episode 98 of 100. I know, almost there. And today on the show, I have a very special guest in John Hutchinson. You may know him as Hutch. He is the owner and consultant for Plan A Consultancy.
Correct.
And John's a little bit different in your business because you're almost like the business of businesses. Tell me a little bit more, and for those that don't know, the 2 or 3 people listening that don't actually know what you do, what does Plan A Consulting do?
So I work as a independent business advisor with SME, so that's your typical SME business that we have in Hawke's Bay and you find around the world, so 10 to sort of 50 staff. And my role is in 2 parts. One is at that governance and strategic level. So what are you doing? Where are you heading? What's the risk? The broader thinking, we've all had to work on the business, not in the business. So that's one part of it. And then the other part is working with clients at more of a management, implementation, get stuff done level. And so my job as the outside person is to help them get clarity if they don't have clarity, put a plan in place, put some milestones in place, and then make sure they do stuff.
So over the last 97 interviews, they've all been business owners. And of various sizes. Some are just starting out, some are still at high school with a business idea, some have been the New Zealand Rich Lister at least once. So there's all sorts of size businesses with complexities or niches or peculiarities to their particular industry. Going in with what you understand about strategy and then implementation, how do you get it right for the size company they are or stage company they're in?
Yeah, look, I think, so a couple of parts to that. I've been consulting, doing this since around 2006, 2007 or whatever, so I see themes and I'm always looking for themes or threads when I'm doing stuff. And so I've identified 5 things at a management operational level, and then at a governance level, the Institute of Directors talks about 4 pillars of governance. And so it doesn't really matter what the organisation is or what the business is. To me, if you've got the structure in place, then everything else sort of flows from that. At a governance level, it's around, determining purpose, having an effective governance culture, having an effective compliance culture, understanding where you're going from a broader perspective and thinking about that. And I don't think it matters whether you are a startup business with an idea to make and sell a widget tomorrow, or you're a company, a large structured company. You've got to have clarity of purpose, because if you've got good clarity of thought, then you actually know where you're going to go. And strategic thinking doesn't need to be this big scary thing. It's just really saying, hey, stop, think about your business in a slightly different way. Consider the risks, consider the things that might impact on your business, what are those what-if scenarios, and just take a broader look. And I just think that's good, sound sense, whether you're starting up something or whether you've had something for a long time with a lot of staff. And so that's what governance is about. Governance is saying, let's look at the business from a more broad perspective, and that's where people like me get involved, because I've got a clean set of eyes, I've got no preconceived ideas, I've got no fear or favour, and I'm not involved in the business of politics, that they've got. So it's saying, where are you going? And then at a management level, there's 5 key drivers that I reckon that I've identified that drive businesses. And you've probably heard of balanced scorecarding and that sort of stuff, so you can use whatever term you like, but I'm a simple man. And the 5 things, I think if a business has a really good planning process, it has some structured sales and marketing activities, it's operationally fit, it understands the finance and admin part of its business, and it's got some good people processes in place. If it can tick the box in those 5 areas, then it's doing a pretty good job. In saying that, it's still got to know where it's going. And so that's how I see strategy and implementation link into the two. Because if you have a really cool strategy, but you don't implement, it's a waste of time. And if you implement and do a whole lot of stuff, but you don't actually know what you're doing or where you're going, then how do you know if you're doing the right stuff? So it's trying to get the balance between the two.
So you must get into a firm or a point where they've actually had a good strategy, but it's aged or it's outlived its purpose, and they're still doing the same things that are aligned with that strategy.
Yep.
It's just, it might now be the wrong strategy.
Yep.
When you first go in, what do you usually find?
So I think if I just go back a moment, so it's my clients sort of fall into 3 different categories, I guess, from a broad perspective. So somewhere in that early startup stage, which I think is up to about 5 years. Some are going through some significant growth, but maybe getting some challenges for that growth. Others are in the not such a good position, and you've got to do something. And the last one is succession planning. So it's not, clients I work with, some will have very good strategy in place and they don't need to change that strategy. It's more about validating and looking at what they're doing. But my process when I go in is we do, depending on what the company wants to do, but for me to understand the business, we basically go and do a full business assessment. So we peel back the layers of the onion and we look at the business from top to bottom. I look at all those 5 key drivers, we look at the governance side, we look at the strategy, we look at the risk. We just try and really drill into what the business is all about. And once we've done that, once we've stripped it down, if there's no strategy, then we put one in place and build up from there, from a business plan. If there is a strategy, that helps us validate, is that the right thing? And then at the management level, what are the key things that need to happen? What are the KPIs? Who's accountable? How does it happen? So we're taking an idea and putting it into a particular function.
That must be quite exciting for the business owners, because you're bringing in an entirely new way of looking at something they care a lot about, and probably providing them new options they didn't know they were sitting on.
Look, I don't know if it's exciting for them. It's exciting for me because I get to see some really cool businesses and we've got some really cool things here. I think I feel very privileged because people tell me things about their business. They tell me things about their relationships. They tell me about their financial positions. There's no hiding. Like if I'm trying to help a client with their business, and they don't need to be in difficulty. They might be going through some great growth, but I need to understand absolutely everything. So it's a pretty privileged position, really, and there is just so many cool stories out there that we don't even hear about.
That's got to be probably one of the hardest parts, is finding out what's actually driving the individual.
Correct.
Not just the pen and paper, the equipment, the hardware and the sales, but why are they in business to start with? Yeah. And is that the same reason that they're in business now? Look,
a lot of people fall into business by default. That was me when I first got involved with my other businesses. It wasn't by plan, it was just by default, and then things sort of go from there. And I think for people, because quite often people will say, what sort of return on my investment should I be getting? Or how much money should I be making? Or what should we pay ourselves? And my answer is always, well, it depends. And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, it depends what you want. It depends what your outgoings are, what do you need at a personal level, how many kids are there, what needs to happen. So there's no right or wrong answer. And I've got a number of clients over the years that have identified that for them, biggest isn't always best. They get to a spot, they go, hey, this is a pretty cool spot, we're doing some good stuff, we've got a good solid business, we've got a great team around us, and we're happy. And it's not my job to say to them, no, you're not, or you should be aspiring for more. That's for the individual person. My job as the facilitator is to help them get what they want. Now, if they say they want to go and conquer the world and do X, Y, Z, then cool, we'll go and do that. But if they go, look, we're in a really cool space, but we want to sharpen up here, we want to sell the business in 5 years, then we work towards that. So my job is not to tell them what the strategy is, because it's their business. They know it inside out. My job is to get all the ideas out of their heads and then put some structure and form around it.
What are some of those success indicators that when you're going in and you see things and you go, yep, that's a tick, that's a tick? Are there certain things that apply across the board? Yeah, look, when I do their business assessment, we run a traffic light report and the assessment. And so I ask them a whole lot of questions about a whole lot of different areas. And, when the report comes out, it's green, yellow, or red. And you can normally see a theme. And so
There's financial numbers, obviously, which are important, but to me, financial numbers are just an outcome of activity or behaviour. So if you're not hitting your financial numbers, is that because you're not operationally fit? You're not operationally fit because you don't have the right people in the right seats. Do you not have the right people because you haven't actually thought who you need? And you haven't thought who you need because you haven't been quite sure where you're going. So my job's to line everything up, but at the end of the day, it's all about trying to put more dollars in the bucket for the client. With some clients have said money's not an issue, we want better lifestyle, and that's cool, but cash is king. I believe cash is king in business at the end of the day. How much that needs to be, that's up for each person to decide.
So that's interesting how you just, your thought process around that, you look at the cash performance and then work back. Like the cash is almost a symptom of either success or of a deeper issue, and then work back to, well, what is that unfulfilled need, or what is the area that they're misaligned on?
Yep. And that's the same when I do budgets. Most budgets, people would go, okay, my sales are going to be this, my cost of sales are that, so my GP dollars that's my expenses, and that's what falls out the bottom. That is the typical way that people think, whereas my question is always, well, what do you want for what I call shareholder remuneration? Now, that might be POAE, it might be drawings, it might be retained earnings, it might be a car, it might be a trip overseas on the business. Not, of course, that's all business related, never anything dodgy, but what's the total shareholder remuneration? Then we go, righto, what's the expenses to run the business? How much power do you need? What's the cost of the tea bags? What's your telephone and tolls? So we work out those below the line expenses. And then depending on what the business is, if it is something that has a cost of sale, and most businesses do, be it labour or materials, then we go, well, okay, well, your GP's X, so we divide one into the other, and we go, right, our sales for the year needs to be this figure. And then we do the reverse, and we go, if our sales is now this, at that GP with those expenses, then you'll hit those targets. And then we put some measurables in place to look at those, but they are just a consequence of activity, so you need to have some leading KPIs in your business as well. And what they are depends on what the business is. But I always look probably for 5 or 6 key numbers at an operational level. And if you look at those, then there's no surprises from the financial side.
Got it. So then that must create a gap between what the business is currently running at and what they would like to have.
Sometimes, yep.
Where there's not a gap, what happens?
Yep. So again, if there's not a gap, it depends what they're getting me in there for. So they might be just getting me there to validate their thinking and provide some outside thought and help them put some structure around that. Or they might go, look, we're hitting those numbers, but we feel frazzled and we're running from pillar to post and we don't have any structure around how we manage our business. Or we're doing those numbers, but we want to sell the business in 5 years, but we don't know what that looks like. So again, my role is to work out what the outcome the client's looking for, and then develop a strategy around that. And that's what I'm trying to say. Every outcome for everyone's quite different. It's not just what comes into the bucket from a cash perspective.
So there are, at this period in time, a lot of very well-established, successful businesses that I'm sure you've been part of. And as our population ages, there are those succession plans that are starting to be put into play. What does that mean for the next generation if they want to start to put their next 5, 10, 20 years into something that's meaningful? How do they engage to be part of that succession?
That's a very good question. And so a lot of people, I don't think, really think about succession at all. So I was with a client this afternoon. They've been in business for 30 odd years, and they're looking at what does succession look like for them in the next 5 or so years. And so we're thinking this far out because we need to look at what do you need to do. And it's hard because, for businesses that are looking at succession, for a well-established business, there's only so many people or certain types of people that can buy those businesses. So if you're thinking, hey, man, I've just come out of school or uni and I want to go and start my own business, you probably haven't got a big bucket of cash to go and buy something existing. And so we get the creators that come along that start something small. So succession looks different things to different people. I'm seeing more and more now where key people are getting an equity share in a business. So that might help with remuneration, with retention. So, they're coming along and they're buying a small share parcel, and over time that increases and other people can come in. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to that, but that's the way for someone to get a part of a bigger chunk of the business. That's probably the only way they can get in at at that younger level.
See, so that's interesting because that culturally in New Zealand is the exception rather than the rule. I think only around 3% of New Zealand businesses have that small shareholding. So that's going to feel quite foreign to a business owner or a husband and wife that
Absolutely.
have owned and earned and built this big thing up to start giving it away piecemeal rather than the big lock, stock and big sale.
Yeah, I think, well, it's not so much giving it away piecemeal if they decide that part of their succession is to bring an equity partner in, but and for a lot of businesses in New Zealand, they do start with mum or dad. And so decisions are made around the kitchen table. As soon as you bring a third party in, that changes the mix completely. It changes the personal dynamics, it changes the governance requirements. If mum and dad own the business and decide they want to go to Fiji for a holiday, they'll take some money out of cash flow, code it as drawings and they're happy, but straight away when you've got another business partner, you can't do that necessarily. So the whole dynamic changes. And so again, it comes down to a lot of clients would like to walk away with that magical dollar, but it depends on what the business is, what the market is, and then who can be involved.
Interesting. So there's an opportunity there if people do want to exit, think far in advance of the actual time you want to sell. Make sure you put the governance in place so it creates those options, even if it creates some additional paperwork and costs in the short term, it's going to get you that ultimate long-term goal.
Yeah, look, I think thinking of clients that I work with at a succession part of their business life, 5 years in my mind. You know, if you said, okay, if someone said today, I'd like to sell my business in 6 months, it just doesn't happen. And I've been involved in transactions where one party's been buying the other party out, and we might have a discussion at the front end. It's probably a 6-month process to do that where all parties are agreed in alignment. So, you know, because to go out of your business, you can either sell it, you can close it, you can bring an equity partner in, you can have it fully managed. There's lots of different things you can do. So that comes back to your very original question around strategy. You need to say, what is our strategy? Where do we actually want to go? And then depending on what that is, what do we need to do? For a lot of people, they don't know what that is, so the first thing is to go and explore those options with them. So I try and get people to get clarity of thought around what they're doing.
And in your own business, how did you get into this versus actually running a business? Yeah,
so by no plan or strategy or anything really. So my background way back, left school, and that was the days when you could join the police as a young fella. And so I went policing for 18 odd years and spent most of my time in the CIB, and most of that sort of on the covert sort of serious crime stuff, which I really enjoyed. Didn't want to be one of those grumpy old buggers that everyone said, man, he should have left ages ago. And I'd worked with a few of those, and I just started to lose the passion and the desire for what I was doing. And so it was, well, what am I going to do next? And didn't really know what I was going to do, but had a mate that owned some gas stations, which looked okay. And then as, you know, once you start looking for things, they appear. Saw an ad for a gas station. I think we settled on the 10th of December. And then on about the 21st of January, the following month, but the next year, we bought our next one. And weren't actively looking, at just the opportunity appeared. And then at a later stage got another one, so we had 3 sites. I managed to extract myself from the day-to-day operations. We put some good management structure in place, and then got involved doing a little bit of other stuff. And then some people asked me if I could give them a hand with their business. And then someone else said, you should talk to this guy. And then it just sort of morphed from there. And I really enjoyed doing it. I love business. I love working with business owners. I think I bring a pretty practical approach because I've been the guy on the other side, you know. Because when someone in a suit turns up, everyone thinks, man, who's this guy? What's he know? So I get all that because I've been that guy. And then got out of the gas station industry maybe 2.5 years ago. And yeah, here I am. So it was there was no strategy, there was no plan. It just sort of morphed into what it is.
I'm thinking from the first thing that came into my mind there when you said the police side is that's why you're so good at asking the right questions.
Look, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to. I'm not the one to say whether I ask the right questions or not. The people that sit across the table from me be a better placed around that. But it does give you an inquiring mind. And I always say trust but validate. And so when people are telling me things, that's fantastic. But I'm always trying to drill into it. And I guess that does come back from those old days, yeah.
because you're trying to get to the truth in both roles, whether it's police or now. It's what's the truth for the organisation.
Yeah, and it's not that people are telling you untruths. It's just that sometimes their perception of their business, because you get, store blind, you see the same thing every day, so you don't actually see what's going on. My job is just to come in and sort of try and uncover what those things are. So, I suppose I have an inquiry mind, and I'm just a nosy bugger. And I just love chatting to people and finding out about their business. And I just learn so much from the people that I work with all the time. So it goes both ways.
I like that saying, store blind. I think that it's very easy to become great at what you do, but that becomes your blind spot.
Correct.
Because you're an expert in that and no one else can do it as well as you can. However, your business may have evolved or you're missing out on opportunities. Then the question, John, is once someone has engaged your services, has gone through the strategy side, then gone through to the operational side and put in place those 5 key pillars that you talked about, how long does it take? When do you start to then see the shift?
I think it depends on the business. It depends if they're operationally sound, if they're well established and they've got growth and succession, then it takes a lot longer. But, for a lot of clients you work with, straight away you can make a difference for them. You can look at their pricing processes, you look at them understanding their cash flows, their sales processes. So it depends what the business is. So that those businesses that are perhaps in distress or are experiencing a bit of out of control growth and they need a little bit of structure, easy to see that pretty quickly. For the businesses where it's more strategic and thinking bigger picture, it's not as evident as an immediate fix, but the owners can see the difference. And so again, the clients I was with today before you came in, they've been in business, like I said, 30 odd years. I've been working with them maybe for 6 months or so, I'm not sure. And they said today, we're just starting now to understand some of the things you're talking about, and that the things we're talking about there are more at a strategic level as opposed to an operational level. If we touch on something operationally, I'll say, look, you guys go and talk about that at your management meeting. So for them, it's different. Whereas a client I was with yesterday, he delivers a particular goods and service, and he was undercharging, but he didn't realise he was undercharging. But he wasn't making any money. So we looked at so we did the reverse budget back up. Said, okay, well that's what you need, what your sales figures need to be. Let's look at how you are charging, and he's seen a change straight away.
That's great.
So there's no right or wrong answer, and that's the cool thing. Everyone's different. There's no cookie cutter approach with me. It's around what's the business need, and then what do we need to do.
Who then takes that plan that's outside the business? Because sometimes I'm sure you would need to subscribe or bring in people for additional support or expertise in a particular area of operations.
Absolutely, yep.
That the business doesn't have access to on their own. What's that network of expertise like in Hawke's Bay or for the companies you advise in New Zealand?
Yeah, look, I think Hawke's Bay, and I'm sure we're typical of provincial New Zealand. I think we're really well serviced. And I've got a saying, if you think you're the smartest person on your team, then your team's in trouble, which means don't try and be absolutely everything. So, my role as an independent advisor is looking at that broader perspective. So it's like the conductor of the orchestra. And so if a client has got a HR or ER issue, then I've got a couple of companies in Hawke's Bay that I go, great, let's get them coming to sort it. Or if a client has an issue around, sales or marketing or what have you, I've got providers there, or their digi strategy needs, updating. There's people to talk to there. So I've been able to surround myself with a good bunch of people that I have complete confidence when I refer that person to the client, they're going there to do the best thing for the client. And I think that's really important, because if you don't do that, and if you try and do everything, that's not fair on the client. And the question should always be, what is the best thing to do for my client?
For those who are listening thinking, I like the sound of what Hutch is saying here, this is something that's new in a way I haven't thought about my business before, but I'd like to do some more reading or on my own or watching of videos. What are the resources that either you have or that are available in New Zealand that are relevant to small, medium-sized businesses here?
Look, I think it's just so much more now than it was when I started. So when I started in business, I was a detective sergeant in the police. So if you gave me a homicide or a serious crime, that was like my day job. I could do that standing in the corner. No problem with that. Went into business. I didn't even know what a balance sheet was. Gross profit, the accountant had to physically teach me how to work that out. Like, I had no idea. And so I stumbled around probably for the first couple of years, not really knowing what I was doing. Understood though that I needed to improve, so I, started to read a lot of things. So any book I could get on business or, management or leadership, I just try and read. Those days we had things called cassette tapes, which don't know if you can remember those, Ryan.
Just.
And so I listened to those, and so I'm a great believer in personal development, because if you want your business to be better, you need to be better yourself. And if I want to be helping clients, I need to be improving as well. And now we've got podcasts like you're doing. There's plenty of books available. Once upon a time to buy a management book, it'll be $50. Now it's probably $15. Ebook and that sort of thing. So there's lots of resources that you can go and invest in yourself. And then there is more stuff available online now. There's the business.govt website, which has a lot of resources. WorkSafe website has a lot of resources now. So I guess it's knowing where to go for a lot of people. And that's why Biz Mentors do a pretty good job. And so that's a volunteer organisation. I do some volunteer work with them. And they're sort of working with businesses that are in those early startup stages for a lot of them. And they don't have the resources to engage an outside person. So, I just encourage people, if they're in the early stages of their business and not sure where to go, then go and speak to their local, Biz Mentors facilitator as well. So there's information out there, there's things out there. What I didn't know when I started in business, I didn't know they were out there, and then I didn't know where to go. And that, I'm sure, for people is a bit of a challenge still.
So you're right. I think the first step is find out what's out there, start watching some, start reading some, and then when you start going, well, what do I apply and when? That's when you actually need someone that can sort out the wheat and make it personal for your particular business situation.
Yeah, no, I think there's never a right time to do things. Sometimes people say, oh, look, should I do the business assessment now, or should we do some strategy stuff now, or should we do it later? There is no right or wrong time, because the business that someone has today will still have needs and challenges in 5 years' time. So I think once you work out where you are in a business, or once a business owner works out where they are, the rest of it becomes easy. But for a lot of people, when I first meet them, they don't actually know where their business is. And they don't know, is it operationally fit, or actually should it be doing other things, because they only know their business. And that's the advantage for me, because I see a broad range of businesses. The principles are the same. The business might be completely different, but the principles are the same. So it's that outside view. So I think for people, don't be scared to ask for help. That doesn't have to be engaging someone like me. That you might find someone in your community that's done pretty well in business and is happy to share their advice. Chat with them. Maybe chatting to your neighbour over the back fence who tells you what you should do with your business. That might not be the most prudent thing, but there is help out there if you go and seek it out.
And it's just like when you say there's never a right time to do it, I think the contrarian thing to do would be to ask for advice and look at your business when the economic cycle is booming, because you've got options and you've got time.
Oh, look, we saw that back in 2008 GFC, and if I think about the economy in Hawke's Bay now, and I'm sure it's the same around the rest of the country, it's pretty buoyant. And so working with clients back in 2008, the sort of things we were looking at and the strategies you need to put in place are completely different to what you're having to put in place today. However, for the owner, their end goal or the outcome they're looking towards potentially is still the same. And so that's taking the really big picture, what are we about as a business? But as the economic cycles change, then you need to modify what you're doing in your business as well.
One last question. Do you ever get tempted to flip back onto the other side and then invest in a business and become a business owner? Because it's very easy to, when you get to look at them, okay, this is the one. I could give it all up for this one, and then maybe not, then I'm going to miss out on these things.
Yeah, look, I've had opportunities over the years to be involved in businesses, and occasionally I've dipped my toe in the water. But I think if you are to go and do something like that, then you really need to say, that's what I'm going to go and do. And I just really enjoy doing what I'm doing at the moment. I'm in a good space. Hawke's Bay is a fantastic place to live. I get to meet and deal with a whole lot of cool people and cool businesses. So I just really enjoy what I do, because you're just continually learning and meeting and seeing people. But you never say never, do you?
You're certainly well respected by the business community. There is very rarely a business event that goes by that someone says, oh, if you need help with that, go and talk to Hutch. It's almost like the nickname for business advice in Hawke's Bay is Hutch.
Oh, I don't know about that, and you're very kind to say that. I think, though, Hawke's Bay is just, it's a town of 50,000 in Napier, and Hastings is probably 60,000, So we are very relationship driven, and but I say that, and I think I know lots of people in business, and then I'll go to different events or see different things or read about things and go, man, I didn't even know those guys existed. So, I got to make sure that I don't become store blind sometimes as well.
You're right. Like when I interviewed Wayne Wolford, he said that there's now 18,000 businesses in the region. I thought it was around 6 or 6,500.
Yeah.
It was way out.
Yeah, look, I don't even know. I don't need to work with that many, so it's okay.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, John, and thank you for sharing your insight into your business, the processes you apply, the importance of strategy to a business at any part of their own life cycle or what's happening in the wider economic cycle. And I think what you are doing for businesses here creates some resilience, and that's something that any province and a country can need. And certainly fascinating to hear where you've come from on your own personal journey to end up here. And I think Hawke's Bay is very lucky to have you in the business community doing what you're doing. Oh,
thank you very much for saying that. And you've asked some good questions. You made me think a tiny bit and reflect as well, which is always cool.
Oh, good. Good to hear.
Good man.
Thanks for your time, John.
Cheers.
Cheers. If you like this episode, remember to subscribe for free on iTunes. Simply search for The Ryan Marketing Show in the iTunes Store.